institutions and its people stink and is corrupt, then you don't have to be an adult. Why bother? The world is just a prison. You may as well go to real prison. So the people who have been telling that to people are the enemy. They are the enemy of the people. People who have destroyed 2 generations of human beings who could have been happy, productive, vibrant family people, enjoyed life, seen their children grow up, gone on vacation, known the love of a decent woman, enjoyed a relationship, achieved pride civically and in their work, amounted to somebody, were told from birth that the world is against you, everybody hates you, this country is a big jail, why bother? Wouldn't it have been better to tell them, hey, look, life is sometimes difficult, but you have to be an adult. It's your responsibility to deal with the difficulty. Years from now, you'll see that I steered you in the right direction. But when you're a child, what do you rather hear? Oh, yeah, you're right. Don't go to school today. There's cutlets in the refrigerator. Stay home. Do whatever you want. Why should you try? Why should you inconvenience yourself? Why should you endure any social, political, or cultural frustration? It's all corrupt anyway. It's all bullshale anyway. It's never your fault. Stay a child. Stay a child. Stay a child. Don't grow. Don't live. Don't expand. Don't breathe. Just stay here, a choking, suffocating child, relentlessly. The government will take care of you. They owe you to take care of you. They've been your enemy, and the least they can do is send you a check. So tell me, who's the enemy of the people? Me and other people who love this country, who demand, in the interests of total social justice, that people wake up to the reality that they must be adults in this life for their own good. Or those people who say, stay there, don't go to school, there's cutlets in the refrigerator, and more to come. On WABC, this is Jay Diamond from New Jersey. By the New York Times. Rudy Giuliani was singled out for demonization last year by the New York Times. Now it's Newt Gingrich. He is the one to be demonized. He embodies all of the angst that the New York Times has when Americans decide that they are going to unshackle themselves from the restraint of their authoritarian government. But the New York Times has an editorial in their Sunday called Newt Gingrich Authoritarian. BS. They want to scare you about Newt Gingrich because they hate Newt Gingrich, because Newt Gingrich doesn't want to let the New York Times and those freaks who write their editorials, those counterculture freaks who write the New York Times editorials and more determine what's on their newsprint pages as well. Newt Gingrich doesn't want to abide by their dictums and how to conduct his life. Nor do I. The left? No, I don't want to say the left. The people that hate this country, like the editorial board of the New York Times, the people that are uncomfortable with the idea of America, like the editorial board of the New York Times, who more and more imposes its value judgments not only on the editorial pages, where I suppose it has a right to, but they also impose their editorial judgments in actual news stories, which we have a right, according to journalistic tradition, to assume will be devoid of value judgments. But since most people these days are so abysmally ignorant, they don't understand that a newspaper's news pages are a different category than a newspaper's editorial page where opinion is welcomed. But on those pages where we are led to believe we are reading news, we have every right to assume that what we're reading is in fact purged of value judgments. Of course, that is not so at the newly constituted New Age, counterculture, hipster, freak-out New York Times, where Joyce Purnick regularly proselytizes anti-American fictions on the news pages, where Charise Jones does the same thing, where Felicia Lee does the same thing, and where Sam Roberts does exactly the same thing. They present as objective news their skewed, off-the-wall, anti-traditional, and anti-American values. And they get away with it because most people these days don't know how to read a newspaper. They don't even expect the news pages not to be immersed in value-laden sentiment. But that's the way it is. A newspaper, the rules of the game dictate that a newspaper and its news pages are just supposed to report fact, whereas on their editorial and op-ed and letters page, they have every right to express an opinion of the management. But that's all an editorial is. It's what the publisher feels about an issue. The publisher of the New York Times has every right to take anti-American to express his anti-American opinions on his own editorial page. He's paying for it. But where he talks about all the news that's fit to print, I think he's violating the canon of journalistic ethics to intrude his own value judgments when we assume that we are reading facts. But anyway, Newt Gingrich, authoritarian. And I raced to the Sunday editorial page when I picked up the paper Saturday night because I knew they would have a lead editorial demonizing Gingrich. I knew it. I just knew it. Normally I read their sections of the paper and I save the editorials for last when I've built up the strength and the stamina without puking at their editorial, so as to be able to read their editorial page without puking on it. But I ran to it first knowing how shallow these people are and how they would, these freaks, these downtown hipsters who write the New York Times is more like the Village Voice. I think of the same people in ponytails and earrings and dressed all in black. I picture guys in tuxedo jackets and black dungarees with pointy boots or work boots writing the editorials for the New York Times. And maybe smoking grass, maybe listening to Bob Dylan. And so they write in the editorial that Gingrich wants to be obeyed, both within a Republican majority that exists mainly to rubber stamp his legislative menu, and within a country where behavior would be regulated by a, quote, society that is emphatic about right and wrong. This offends the New York Times editorial hipsters and beatniks. This offends these people. They're offended by an idea of a society that is emphatic about right and wrong. Now, can you tell me why that disturbs them so? Here is I will hazard a guess. Because a society that is emphatic about right and wrong presumes that the society is in a position to judge right and wrong. And since the editorialists, the hipsters and beatniks and freakouts that write the downtown hip crowd, the bathhouse crowd, the Continental Baths crowd listening to Bette Midler types in 1975 kind of people that write the editorials for the New York Times, they are uncomfortable with the idea that this society be emphatic about right or wrong because they believe that what you say is wrong. They believe that what the United States, quote, this society, what this society would regard as wrong is really right because the people that write editorials for the New York Times feel the society is wrong. Therefore, everything that the quote, America of Newt Gingrich would think is wrong is really what the editorial board at the New York Times would think is right. See, according to the guys who are wearing ponytails and earrings and smoking pot, writing the editorials of the New York Times, all dressed in black. Black T-shirt, black 8 sizes too big tuxedo jacket, black combat boots, and black dungarees, maybe with an upside-down cross dangling from both their ears. A lot of those guys wear 2 earrings. Now, those people believe that America is wrong. So everything that America would think is wrong, the New York Times editorialists think is the right way to live. You get it? So, of course, they believe that America is oppressive, racist, fascist. So, of course, they're upset by the notion that this become a society that is emphatic about right and wrong because we're going to be emphatic about what they believe is wrong. And anything that somebody, a traditional culture American thinks is right is really a bad thing. So of course they're upset when Gingrich talks about a society that's emphatic about right and wrong. Because what Gingrich's America considers to be right, the New York Times says is wrong. And vice versa. So that notion, Bob, they would rather say, oh, well, man, oh, well, I know murder is wrong, but, if you're, there's so, Gingrich is so, bourgeois, man, you're so bourgeois, and, they don't even did you see Helms, on TV today? And did you see what he was, did you see, on ABC, Peter Jennings, when they showed Helms, talking about Ron Athey's art? Man, they showed it. like they got this big guy about 400 pounds, and he bends over, and that's well, you know, that's when the police say assume the position. I thought they meant bend over. Like, so, like, this guy is bending over, and, like, Athy is, like, cutting his back, man, and, like, Athy is positive. Ooh, I just envy him for being positive. It's just much more gay if you're positive than if you're not. Like, sometimes I, like, wonder, like, why are these gay people trying to remain negative? Like, why are they traitors to being gay? And, like, anyway, Athy, they showed, like, Athy's art, like, man, like his conceptual art, like when he carves up the back of the 500-pound guy, and then, you know, like the guy bleeds, and then Athy takes paper towels and sops up the blood, and then, like, he's got a clothesline on top of the audience, so, like, he takes with clothespins, I mean, it's so groovy, and he takes, like, the clothespins, and he hooks up the paper towels, like, soaked in the big guy, the big bear. I just love a bear type. And he takes the clothespins, and he takes the paper towels, like, full of the bear's blood, and he, like, puts it on the clothesline, like, hundreds of them, man. Like, the guy's really, like, bleeding. And, oh, I want to be drenched in that blood. And so then he, like, moves the clothesline so the whole audience is, like covered by the 100 paper towels full of the bear's blood. And isn't that great? Imagine Jesse Helms saying that that's not art. And that traitor, Robert Byrd, I mean, like, he's a Democrat. He should love this kind of stuff, and he should like it. I just why don't they don't want fascists want to take away our artistic? They don't want to fund it. Excuse me, like, man, I got to get back to work. I'm writing the editorial of the Times for Sunday, you know, and then I've, like, got to go to the bathhouse. Like, you know, I've got to pull myself, like, together. I love your boots. They must weigh pounds. But you put it on my neck, and then you know where you can put it. I've got to get back to this editorial. It's very important. I mean, we have to... Can you believe, like, Newt is going to be the speaker? Oh, God, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm going down to the Keys, and, like, I'm never coming back. On WABC, this is J. Editorials who belong on the counterculture Village Voice, but who somehow have infiltrated the Times thanks to Sulzberger III, Jr. Pinch, one is Pinch, the other is Paunch, the other is Punk. What is it? Pinch Sulzberger and Punk Sulzberger. Yeah, the old man was Pinch, the new guy, Jamie, is that his name? Jamie? Yeah, I know, Arthur Jr. I don't know, he's Punk. I think that's the name. Anyway, he's a downtown kind of guy. But he's offended by the idea of a society that's emphatic about right and wrong. Can you imagine an American editorialist really coming out and saying that the idea of the difference between right and wrong offends him? That offends the New York Times. It's easy to understand, though, because the New York Times wants to rationalize. They want to justify all wrong behavior. And what is their rationalization to account for wrong behavior? So a person rapes and another person murders. They want to blur the line between right or wrong. The rape wasn't so bad, and the murder really wasn't so bad either, because these people had a right to rape and murder because of the unfairness, because of the fascism, because of the racism, because of the greed of America. So these pathological responses that you think are wrong are not really wrong. They're merely totally rational responses to an environment, a political environment that's pathological. That's how the New York Times explains away wrong behavior, by telling you that the wrong behavior is really less wrong, even right, and it's the society that's wrong. So a pathological response to a pathological environment is not really so pathological, not really so morally wrong. It's the environment that compels these individuals to behave in an antisocial fashion that is truly to blame. And how dare Newt Gingrich try to certify that there is such a thing as right and wrong. Oh, terrible. I mean, the next thing you know, they'll be telling you that homosexuality is not as good as heterosexuality. Just, I'm in a snit about that. Then they go on, they continue. Unfortunately, Mr. Gingrich learned something besides campaign science in his years on the sidelines. He learned how to invoke a fictionalized vision of the American past and how then to whip the nostalgia for that non-existent past into voter anger. Mr. Reagan first perfected this trick. But somehow with Mr. Gingrich, see, they have to insult Reagan too. Somehow with Mr. Gingrich, it has a meaner, more intolerant edge. Bullshit. because the New York Times demonized Reagan just this way before they saw that Reagan was really a nice guy, and so now it's tougher to demonize an ex-president, particularly when he's just written a letter telling you that he has Alzheimer's disease. See, they would like to hate Reagan, but they're afraid of the criticism they will engender if they're nasty to Reagan now. So they put him down, but they say that Gingrich looks worse when he does it. All right. Democrats have felt the edge. So in due time will the Republican legislators who are about to be called upon to stand and deliver for their new boss. Well, let me tell you something about this editorial. This is wrong. It is not a fictionalized vision that Newt Gingrich is invoking about the American past. It is not a fiction. If you're under 35 years old, you might be conned into believing it is a fiction. But I'll tell you something about this country when I was a little boy. It was stylish in those days to love the country and respect its institutions. You might have been aware of imperfections in certain people in the country, but it was very voguish. It was very stylish. It was very chic in 1956 to love this country and its institutions. That is the opposite that applies to now. Now it is stylish and voguish and oh so trendy to hate the institutions. They're corrupt. They're invalid. They're illegitimate. They're racist. They're fascist. They're greedy. So it is not a fictionalized past. It is a past that even somebody 40, 42 years old can remember from when he was a child. There was a time when it was absolutely stylish. It was in style and voguish and modish to love this country and revere its sacred institutions, the same way it is now trendy in bathhouses and the editorial board of the New York Times, which just as well might be a bathhouse, to hate and vilify the hallowed institutions in this country that I still revere. So that was not a fiction of the past, New York Times and Sulzberger. That was very much an America that did exist, that had some respect for itself, and that understood the value of a human being accepting adulthood and living up to the responsibilities of adulthood, something that is not to be found in the innards of a bathhouse. And besides, ladies and gentlemen, I've come to the conclusion, as have the American people, that those who hate this country are least suited to running it. All right, on to Joan with her child in the stroller. Looks rather disheveled for a psychiatrist. Looks as though his own emotional life might be disordered, but isn't that true of mental health professionals? I feel uncertainty and fear, said this individual about the elections, walking yesterday on West 80th Street. I feel uncertainty and fear. That makes it, but I'll bet this guy didn't feel fear when Crown Heights was going up in flames. Then he wasn't afraid because he was in his Upper West Side sanctum, and the Crown Heights were the problems of other people. But now he feels threatened. How does the liberal Upper West Side feel now? By the way, this is a district that voted 6-1 for Mario Cuomo. The liberal Upper West Side is very upset, said Fran Schoen, who was walking along West 79th Street yesterday. Indeed, in interviews over the last 2 days with often loquacious, if weary-sounding people, the same adjectives kept surfacing: upset, distressed, disgusted, depressed, frightened, appalled. Why they feel this way, aside from the fact that their side lost, is a question people found harder to answer, but it seems to have its roots in a kind of pride. The Upper West Side, with its well-educated populace, its bookstores and bagel shops, its older lefty intellectuals and younger upwardly mobile families, has long felt itself in the vanguard of social justice. How odd. In other words, their feelings of dismay regarding this election is a result of their sense of social justice being offended. Why was Mario Cuomo's letting Crown Heights rot for 3 days more symbolic of social justice than a mayor who would have stopped it and let Yanko Rosenbaum live? Maybe the psychiatrist can answer that for me, because I'm not that smart. Listen to this. Okay. Let's see. And I feel uncertainty and fear, said this individual, psychologist, it says. He's identified in the picture as a psychiatrist. In the text of the article, the same man is identified as merely a psychologist. But he said, I feel community here. All right. Referring to the newly elected Republicans as these people, as in, these people are not going to find a way to cut the budget without affecting the services of those who need them. Well, it's true. The Democrats have been servicing us the way a bull services a cow. Ms. Schoen, a retired teacher, blah, 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 reflected a retired teacher who's lived in the neighborhood for 40 years, reflected the downtroddenness of many of her middle-class peers who find themselves suddenly opposed to the zeitgeist and are cast by the outspoken soon-to-be House Speaker, Newt Gingrich, as the enemies of normal Americans. Well, I think he's right. Am I depressed? Said a research scientist who was window shopping on Broadway. Of course I am. It's a female. Everyone I know is. So are some people she didn't. I'm more depressed than anyone, said Dr. Kent Sepkowitz, a 41-year-old physician who grew up in Oklahoma. He was one among many who voiced the idea that the essential and essentially appealing quality of Manhattan is that spiritually, even more than physically, it is but an island off the coast of America. See that? There are people who live here in Manhattan who are proud of the fact that it's un-American. Doesn't that make you feel great? That's what he said. Many voiced the idea that he was one among many who voiced the idea that the essential and essentially appealing quality of Manhattan is that spiritually, even more than physically, it is but an island off the coast of that Philistine land known as the horrible America. This is why I left the Midwest, and now it's caught with me, he said. The only consolation I have is that I grew up during the McCarthy era, and there was life after that. All right, pausing in front of Shakespeare's, the bookstore on Broadway and 81st Street, another guy nodded at his wife and said, she's depressed. I take a longer view. As the West Side goes, so goes the West Side. He predicted it, she said, shuddering, particularly at the promise of the governor-elect George Pataki. This is great, folks. Listen to this one. Particularly at the promise of George Pataki to reinstate capital punishment, which Governor Cuomo staunchly resisted. Quote, I cannot imagine living in a state with the death penalty. It makes you feel less than human. This is the way people think on the Upper West Side. I can't imagine living in a state with a death penalty. It makes you feel less than human. Well, maybe you should move out. Less than human. But killing people, 7 people killed a day in New York City, that doesn't make you feel less than human. You're worried about the 1 in 5 million murderers, and when you read what these murderers do, you mean the Amanda Wengert's murderer, taking her behind closed doors and violating a 7-year-old girl and killing her and mutilating her, and she's bleeding and dying and screaming and horrified, an innocent child. That, you can live in a state with that. But you can't live in a state where there's a death penalty. That will make you feel less than human. But the depravity around you is something apparently with which you can easily align yourself. So the woman who was 63 added, I'm so old, I'm afraid I'll never see the pendulum swing back. Splendid. In addition to liberalism, I would call it anti-Americanism, the Upper West Side is also a bastion of psychotherapy. I'm going to talk about psychotherapy later. But it continues, and several therapists in the neighborhood. This is not a comedy article. This is supposed to be straight news, but I'm going to write this up as a skit. And it's also a bastion of psychotherapy. And several therapists in the neighborhood said politics frequently found its way into sessions, though it's too soon, they said, for any reaction from last Tuesday to have settled in on the couch. Quote, these things take a while to filter through people's offices, one doctor said, insisting, like many others, on anonymity to protect her patients. When Giuliani was elected, I heard a lot about it. Could you imagine? Oh, doctor, what are we going to do? Giuliano was elected. Oh, doctor, help me. Yeah. That was heard in a lot of proctological examinations. Doctor, what are you doing? The big topic regarding politics, she said, is, quote, whether to stay in the city. Great. Leave. Mayor. Pat Buchanan for Speaker of the Council. Terrific. Everybody leave. Especially people with young children. One person I'm seeing now comes to mind. He's well put together, not a crazy guy. This is a therapist talking. Gee, I'd hate to be one of her other patients. Now, if I'm reading about her and she's talking about someone else and she says he's put together, not a crazy guy like my other patient, Jay Diamond, wonder how I'd like that. Anyway, he has the feeling that the world is coming to an end. Everything he lived for in the 60s and 70s has disappeared. Thank God. Of course, the thank God is mine, not the article. Imagine a guy is worried because the low-life culture of the 60s and 70s is being snuffed out, receding. Of course, every now and then a contrary voice piped up. Here's a great guy. I'm not your typical Upper West Sider, said Joel Martell, a rather big-voiced iconoclast sitting in the jammed Barnes & Noble bookstore cafe. I'm a neocon, so of course I'm delighted. Good. Mr. Martell, 48, a lawyer, added, I'd like to meet this guy. I think there are more and more people turning to conservatism because of the failure of the Democrats and the increasing dependency of people on the largesse of the state. All right, so at least there's one grown man on the Upper West Side. On WABC, this is Jay Diamond. But the psychiatrists themselves are in a dither because of Speaker Gingrich. That's one of the great things I love about Newt. I like it when I like it when people I'm disdainful of are scared to death of politicians that I like. I like the fact that they get agitated, their anxiety level is enhanced, their blood pressure goes up, they start breathing heavily. I like it. I like people to be nervous who I feel have every right to be nervous. Hello, George. This is Jay Diamond. Hi.
Weekend, a white Reverend Hare of Hempstead, beaten and attacked by two blacks to a point where he now has to walk with a cane. One white Reverend, one Asian Reverend. Aren't they of the same race that Colin Ferguson went hunting for on the Long Island Railroad?
I didn't read the story about Reverend Hare. When did that happen?
That happened over this weekend.
Well, I think that is why the politics of anger and the politics of hate is so destructive. I think that people can be influenced to commit racial crimes when an atmosphere of hate and dissatisfaction is deliberately cultivated by activists. I agree with you. And I think it's unfortunate.
And where's Jesse Jackson's concern for two of his fellow reverends, or do the reverends first have to be black before his contrived and selective passions are aroused?
A lot of people will be angry at you for bringing that up, but I think it is a valid thing to bring up. People are free to refute it, but it is true that Reverend Jackson's ire, Reverend Jackson's critical faculties do seem to be brought to bear only on certain issues and not on others. Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Appreciate the call.
He's a trouble, my boy. Doctor, it's this like the Taki guy, Doctor, and all these Republicans, Gingrich. It's affecting my marriage. What is the nature of this marital problems? Well, Doctor, it's my wife, Doctor. Ever since she found out that, like, Newt Gingrich was going to become the new Speaker of the House, she's regressed. She's in some kind of denial. She's keeping away from me. She thinks she's Franklin Roosevelt. Wait a minute. This could be worse. I mean, after all, President Roosevelt was a brilliant man. It's not a new personality. It's not that I mind so much, Doctor. To be honest with you, it's a bit of an improvement. And she keeps to herself more anyway. So, what are you complaining about? What's the problem? It's the wheelchair. She's leaving skid marks on everything.
All right, I think of our remake of Buck Privates, which will be later in the week. Right now, here is a multicultural media production through the courtesy of Dino De Laurentiis, Franco Zeffirelli, Sergio Leone, and Federico Fellini, presenting Al Sharpton as Gopher Pyle's U.S. MC.
Your left, right, left, Piles. You're out of step, Piles. Use your left foot. Left, right, left, right. No. Squad, halt. Piles, I thought you said you were experienced in this marching business. You told me you knew how to march. Knew all about it. No doubts.
Well, this ain't the kind of marching I'm used to doing, General. I kind of march to my own drum.
Well, perfect, Piles. Maybe I'm not teaching it right.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, after all, I've only been in this man's career for 27 years, and you tell me that after all these years, I'm doing it all wrong.
I didn't say that, General.
Tell me what I'm going to do there, Piles. Since you're such an expert on the subject, we're going to let you lead this parade. Come on, pull out, Piles. You call the cadence.
Well, okay. Company, turn, hut. Third march. Hut, 2, 3, 4, hut. 2, 3, 4. I don't know what I've been told. My forebears were bought and sold. Barrack Can told me the news. Slavery was the fault of Jews. Sound off. 1, 2. Sound off. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Halt! Stop, halt! Hold it, hold it! Stop right there, Pyle! Front and center. Are you a troublemaker, Pyle? Is that what you like to do? Make trouble? All right, at ease, men. Here comes Sergeant Crater. Attention! What seems to be the problem, Corporal? Is there something I should be made aware of? Yes, Sergeant, there is. It's this man right here. He's giving me nothing but trouble. I see. You, a troublemaker, eh? Well, perhaps I should have a word with him. Pyle, front and center.
Yes, sir.
Hey, tell me you're a troublemaker, Gyrene. Oh, listen, Jarhead, is there any truth to that? Oh, please tell me it isn't so.
It isn't so.
Tell me, what's your name, Gyrene?
My name's Gopher Pyle. People call me Gopher Pyle.
I see.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is just a preview of what you'll hear. Quick production, West Side Story, wherein residents of the Upper West Side consult their mental health practitioners for advice on how to cope with Newt Gingrich and the Republican majorities in both houses.
Doctor, you gotta help me. It's the Republicans, Doctor. Ever since I found out, Jesse Helms would oversee funding of the National Endowment for the Arts, I've had this overwhelming desire a compulsion to decoupage Elvis pictures on all my clocks. Well, perhaps you're making too much of this whole thing. It's not just me, Doctor. It's my wife, too. Since the Republicans took over, my wife's gone over the edge. Over the edge. She's lost her mind. Now she thinks she's John Kennedy. Last night when we made love, she finally ended up thrashing around in bed and screaming. I thought, oh my God. After 12 years, I finally brought her to a climax. And this coming from a woman who'll only eat bananas with a knife and fork. And then I found out she was only having back spasms.
On another day.
Doctor, you've got to help me. I think I'm going out of my mind. You can't go, but you've already left. Please, Doctor, don't kid around. All right, what seems to be the trouble? What is your problem? It's all these Republicans, Doctor. They're driving me crazy. Suppose you calm yourself and tell me all about it. It's like this. Yesterday I heard that Bob Dole is going to control the purse strings of public television. So last night I dreamt I was watching TV, and I put on Channel 13 to watch one of my favorite shows, Battle of the All-Star Obsessive Compulsives. I remember I was really looking forward to it. Bobby Abrams and Michael Kinsley were tied for first place in the anal retentive Iron Man competition. But instead of Michael Kinsley, it was an infomercial. I saw Ron Popeil, and he was spray painting that little bald spot on top of Father Aristide's head.
And in yet another office, deep in the Upper East Side.
Doctor, you gotta help me. I think I'm going crazy.
So tell me, Reverend, what seems to be the enigma?
I don't know much about them enigmas. I did get a barium enigma once, but they didn't find anything wrong.
No. An enigma is a problem. What is the nature of your problem?
Oh, well, Doc, it's the Republicans. They're really starting to get on my nerves. Why, last night I had a dream. I dreamt I called Newt Gingrich a racist, and he told me to go to hell.
That's a very interesting dream, Herr Reverend.
Yeah, well, that's not all.
Continue, my son.
It's a good thing you didn't say boy.
I said my son. Continue.
I always dreamed that me and Jesse Jackson called a massive rally outside the radio station.
Are you sure it was a dream?
Oh, yeah, sure. Look, anytime Jesse and I hold a rally and more than 10 people show up, it's got to be a dream.
Perhaps it was too cold for them. Take a pill.
All right, back on WABC. Hello, John.
Hi, Jay. Yeah, Jay, I was also outraged at Christy Whitman's appearance with Bob today. You know, I'm sick and tired of her cryptic phrases that she always uses: multiculturalism, tolerance, racism. You know, she always uses, she and all cowering liberals use these terms as though it's white that has to be addressed and cautioned.
Well, you know, go easy on her, John, because I understand she won't be governor for long. I got a call from my friend, Steven Spielberg called me. They're making the new Beverly Hillbillies, and she's been signed for Miss Hathaway. See, Nancy Culp has departed, so...
Well, no, she belongs in Hollywood because that's where all the rest of the liberals are. And I'm tired of hearing talk show hosts expressing shock about the anger coming from conservative callers these days. White males and conservatives have been under attack since the 1960s. European culture and traditions are being dismantled. Whites are blamed for everything and demonized. The double standard is blatant. It's now chic to hate white people, even if you're white. Hollywood comedians, freaks, make whites their targets constantly. Where's it written that no matter what happens to white people, we're not supposed to get angry? And we've been encouraged for years to start speaking up because we're losing our country, and when we do, we're vilified.
Well, no, I think you're making a valid point, which is that, and I tried to make this to Ed Koch today. I said, how much of politics is original and how much is a reaction to an event? Meaning that at first I didn't think 187 was the greatest idea. I was uncomfortable with the idea of nurses and school teachers becoming agents of the government. Once I saw those Mexicans, once I saw those lowlifes trashing McDonald's and burning the American flag, I was 100% for Proposition 187. So they alienated me. And I think that my reaction was valid. And similarly, when you are constantly berated by professional protesters who make a career of hating this country, its institutions, and its people, I think it will tend to encourage anger in a lot of people who wouldn't ordinarily feel that anger.
Yeah, well, you know, it's amazing to me how that caller was so impressed by Jesse Jackson's one statement, if he did indeed make that. Who knows if that guy was making it up? Meanwhile, Jesse Jackson has made 1,000 other statements that are totally anti-American and anti-white, and he's impressed by this one time that he made him a statement. And I'll guarantee you that that was taken out of context, where he was trying to say something that really was pro-black and not really as much pro-white or pro-American. There's something missing there, because Jesse Jackson has proven that he hates America. He's hobnobbed with everyone. I loved, by the way, the first hour of that get-together, that round table this afternoon, was devoted once again to Ed Koch telling us about how wonderful his mayoralty was. This guy is, his ego is all-consuming. And I loved your imitation of him, by the way, and I hope he was offended by it, because anything that offends this guy, what a fraud he is. He's all for a boycott of Colorado to force them to accept the gays, but he's against the boycott of Castro, who's only 90 miles away, one of the greatest haters of America ever. What a hypocrite he is. And he never can say that he can never just come out and make a statement or criticize anyone. He has to always first say, I happen to like so-and-so, because he has to make sure that he's invited to all the cocktail parties.
Hey, is that all you have to do? I'd like to go to those cocktail parties. I don't think I'm on the A-list, John.
Well,
all right.
I just absolutely despise him.
All right.
Thanks, Jay.
Good night. One act. Yes, more West Side Story. Doctor, you gotta help me. I think I'm losing my mind. And that seems to be the problem. It's all these Republicans, Republicans everywhere I look. Even when I go to sleep, when I wake up, when I go to the fridge and I open up the Frigidaire, there's Republicans sitting in there, glaring at me, staring at me, laughing in my face, tormenting me, tweaking me. I think they're trying to control my mind. And that makes you say this. Well, last Wednesday, I listened to a speech by Newt Gingrich. I can't even say his name. My teeth begin to vibrate. And I found myself agreeing with him. Doctor, you've got to help me. I think I'm turning into a monster. Now, calm yourself. Surely one can't be demonized by the mere fact of finding agreement. But that's not all, Doctor.
it's getting even worse. On Sunday, I watched the PBS fundraiser, the nocturnal emissions of the Arawak Indians. And I didn't even phone in a pledge. Yes? I haven't wet the bed in over a week. Mm-hmm. And yesterday, I told my wife no. Well, you've certainly become a real man, haven't you? All right, back to the phones and more.
Go to that surreptitiously recorded tape right now. Hope we don't get into trouble for this. I mean, I don't think you're allowed to wiretap a psychiatrist's office and then play it on the radio. Well, if they sue me, so what?
Doctor, you got to help me. I think I'm losing control of my life.
What seems to be the problem? You're here lately with the same condition, day after day after day.
It's the Republicans, Doctor. Ever since they took over, I don't know, maybe it's some kind of contact aggression, but I've experienced like this tremendous urge to assert myself.
Well, why don't you just relax and tell me all about it?
Well, last weekend I was talking with my fellow members of the Homeowners Association.
I thought we got you over that hump.
No, the Homeowners Association. And we agreed that the crime situation has gotten completely out of hand. So we decided to do something about it. And we reached out in an organized effort to take back our streets. But Curtis Lee said he really didn't see any compelling need for a Guardian Angels chapter in Southampton. So we decided to go our own route and take the law into our own hands. Members of my anxiety suppression support class joined forces with the passive-aggressive etiquette therapy group, and we started our own gang.
You started your own street gang?
Yeah, we call ourselves the Lords of Tolerance.
This sounds very serious.
Are you kidding? We've already had our first rumble.
You mean this gang of yours has already engaged in violent behavior?
Well, yes, but we acquitted ourselves well.
You mean this gang, these Lords of Tolerance, actually had a street-level altercation? With whom? The Bloods, the Crips, the Latin Kings?
Not exactly. They were more like a group of religious extremists.
You mean terrorists? You did battle with Hamas? With the Hezbollah?
Well, no. Actually, there were a couple of Jehovah's Witnesses, but they do have a tendency to be aggressive.
All right. After the Upper West Side,
Me confused with the milkman. So lately, I've been seriously thinking about dumping her. I talked with some friends of mine out in California, and I'm considering taking off to the West Coast. Maybe I might tour some Girl Scout camps and cruise for chicks with Kelsey Grammer.
So what is stopping you?
Guilt, don't you understand? Every time I even fantasize about cheating on my girlfriend, my mother catches me.
So why don't you just make a clean break of things and perhaps explore some alternative methods to meeting women?
Gee, I don't know about that, Doctor. I kind of like the system I already have. I mean, who needs computer dating when you can adopt?
all right, on WABC.
And now, Mario Cuomo.
Greetings across the formerly looted and tax-soaked plains, my friend. Friends, search no further. Steven Spielberg, it is I, your host, the cure for congressional conservative congestion. A 10,000 multicultural colonic coming right at you, otherwise known as the dose. America, the way things ought not to be. Thank you, David. Thank you very much, the former outstanding mayor of New York. Standing on the ledge of societal evolution, friends, coming to you live by a taxpayer-subsidized splendor, high atop the studios of National Public Radio, the flagship station of excellence in liberalism. And you thought it was an oxymoron. Well, friends, they said it was all over. They said, he's gone. You won't have Cuomo to kick around anymore. And all I've got to say to them is, they're wrong. Let's get right to the phones. Iggy, you're on the air. Mega Unity's dose. Greetings, Ziggy. What's your question? It's all these Republicans, Dose. Now that they're taking over, do you think we'll be hearing more about the Whitewater investigations? I don't think so, Iggy, and I'll tell you why. First of all, it would be a tremendous waste of taxpayers' money. Money that could be better used for a more utopian purpose, like midnight basketball, or maybe buying Carl McCall a new calculator. So you believe Bill Clinton is innocent? Are you kidding? I hope you don't mind my saying this, Iggy, but that is a dumb question. I mean, are you aware of the fact that the Clinton administration was investigated and every one of those charges were found to be completely without merit? Who conducted the investigation? The FBI? Even better than that. Bill Clinton was investigated by two of the most highly respected agencies in the nation, the Senate Ethics Committee and Geraldo Rivera, and was found to have broken absolutely no laws of any major consequence. Thank you, Iggy. Okay, let's take a call from New York City. Hello, New York. All right, thank you. Let's try New Jersey. Hello, New Jersey.
Mario, ascendame. Tuesday, provenos facci.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we'll try one more. Connecticut. Come on in, Connecticut. All right, look, we're just about out of time. I was hoping we might have the opportunity to discuss my legacy to New York. Not just a $4 billion deficit, but something much more important. Of course, I'm talking about my momentous contribution to the New York University Brain Trust. But we're out of time. Okay, we'll play his speech as we go to break. You'll love him. The man's a genius. You won't regret listening to this. You're going to love this. This man, as I say, is a genius. Somebody I put into practice. Somebody who I made. You might say this is a man that I created. Good night, everybody. Here he goes.
Diane Ravitch, Albert Shanker called forth their partners, and they decided to single me out for an attack as the big boogeyman.
On WABC. Ross, how much money are you going to charge him?
Haven't figured it out yet, but there's less and less money left because your job is going to Mexico. I didn't tell you that, but I'm getting a Mexican announcer to come up here and work for a lot less money. Ask me the questions in a Spanish accent. So what? As long as they can be understood, I can answer them.
Thank you, Ross. I guess I get my paycheck, my severance.
There ain't no severance. There used to be severance before NAFTA. That's why you need me, because nobody has any severance.
Okay, I'll say goodbye now, Ross. Here's the new announcer.
Ross, tell me something. How much is going to cost rice and beans when you become the president?
Well, rice and beans are going to be less expensive because I'm going to have more planted north of the border. You people south of the border are on your own, except for you, be my announcer at a low rate.
Ross, I have a question for you again. When it comes up the South Sapan playing, how much going to charge to play at the New Year Eve party?
Well, now, there are going to be a lot more parties when I'm elected because...
Well, it goes something like that.
Hi, Jay.
How are you, John?
Good,
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too. But, I wanted to say you're absolutely right about a lot of these unions. I saw them in action firsthand a couple of times when my company moved uptown from 26th Street, and we wanted to take our computer tapes out of these big crates that they deliver them in. We were told, no, don't touch them. You're messing with our job. We wanted to get them in our racks and get to work. And you multiplied that by millions of instances, Jay, around this country. And that's why American production is down. And they've driven our auto industry into trouble. I'll never forget on a talk show, I saw these representatives of the auto industry get up and blame the owners of the auto industry or the leaders of the auto industry because they were giving them cheap parts, in the late 70s when the auto industry was really hurting. And they blamed the heads of the auto industry. But what they didn't tell you is that the reason that they were getting cheap parts was because the unions had driven the prices up for everything with their salaries and outrageous demands. That this was all that the heads of the unions could afford to give them, for heaven's sake. And our newspapers, look how they've gone out of business, so many of them. This is all because of unions, and another reason I despise them for the most part, although they do serve some good purposes still. Most of the union leadership is so far to the left, they're about to tip over. I got a letter right before this last election urging me to vote Democrat because, as we all know, the Republican Party is not for the working man. Trickle-down economics didn't work, and we don't want to go back to that nonsense. Well, the lies... I mean, I thought Bill Clinton wrote this brochure. They're still out of touch with the American people. Thank God that many union members don't listen to them. But the leadership is very far to the left. And look at the truckers union, for heaven's sake. But they have been, at one time, they were good for America. We needed them. Now they're just totally out of control.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate the call. Heads back and forth every day on television, wondering, trying to figure out, to decipher whether or not Bill Clinton should or will shift to the right, or should or will put his back up and arch to the left, is the fact that what is lost on all of these people is that whatever he's doing, he won't be truthful about it. Is that what you expect from a president in the form of leadership? Somebody who cosmetically alters his political appearance to fit the zeitgeist, instead of helping to create a zeitgeist by leading people. See, that's the whole problem with this individual in the White House. He is a captive of his deep, overweening need to be loved by people, rather than the leader of a nation. What they are, it's very interesting that the people recommending and debating whether or not he should arch to the right or put his back up and hold fast to the left, which he loves, what's lost on these people is that maybe the best thing is for him to be himself, to lead the country rather than follow the country, because that's what they're recommending. When you talk about a person who is the President of the United States and make recommendations to that individual whose whole job is to lead, and your recommendation, even if you're his ally, is that, well, he should now tack to the right because it seems that's where the people really want to go. I know that's not what he wants to do. It's anathema to him. He is a prisoner of the hard left, but what he should do is he should make believe he's now going to the right to fool people so he can be reelected again. And then once he's a lame duck, after he wins re-election in '96, what we hope, sotto voce, of course, is that he immediately reverses course and goes back to the even harder left from whence he came. See, they're recommending that Bill Clinton trick you, which should be easy because that's all he's been doing anyway. But the man has such a low level of awareness. His awareness is so diminished, his consciousness is so low, that he's been tricking himself because he doesn't even know what or who or why he is. What does he stand for? Well, he does stand for some kind of, frankly speaking, Newt Gingrich was right. He stands for some kind of a McGovernick counterculture ethic, which means that when his wife declares that no male shall be considered for Attorney General, he doesn't dare reproach her and say, well, honey, I think it's probably a better idea that we choose the person best suited for the job, the most qualified individual, irrespective of whether he's a man or a woman. He didn't say that to his wife. And of course, when it comes to enforcing civil rights, not only does it have to be a person of color, it has to be a real person of color. What is Lanny Guinier's expression? An authentic black, which means somebody who is repulsed by the idea of conventional America, bourgeois America, normal Americans. Of course, the person who is chosen as the enforcer for civil rights has to be somebody who evinces a disdain for traditional America and somebody who evinces a belief that America has been unjust, fascistic, greedy, and racist, because only a person like that can fight the battle for civil rights. And, of course, Roberta Achtenberg, a severely disoriented person emotionally, is appointed as the Assistant Secretary of HUD, and immediately she begins to literally act as an enforcer when she threatened to jail community residents in many areas of the country for merely exercising their right to free speech. Yeah, well, you remember the arrangement there. The government, HUD, was going to place homes for mental defectives, for drug-addicted child molesters, drug-addicted criminals, felons, people who were mentally incompetent and on drugs. It's true. I'm not making this up. And they wanted to put these residence homes in residential neighborhoods so that next door to you, trying desperately to raise your family in an urban environment, would be a home maybe with 100 or maybe with 200 people who were mental defectives, who were mentally ill, and who had records of convictions for drug abuse, drug dealing, and sex abuse, and violent crimes, etc., etc., etc. When the communities were, of course, frightened by this idea, offended by this idea, her response was to threaten them when they had meetings to get together and try to oppose the notion of citing homes for mental defectives next door to residences where children live and right next door to schools. In fact, in Manhattan, it happened in Gramercy Park, and they wanted to cite the home for mental defectives right near the school, half a block away. True story, and that's why great community activists like Dominic Crispino were threatened with jail merely for organizing, merely for speaking. And that, ladies and gentlemen, a policy engendered by William Jefferson Clinton's HUD. So go figure that out. But to raise vicious dogs and starve them so that they fight each other and maybe even attack you or your child. Police raided an alleged dogfighting ring, really high-class place we live in. You know, this is not 1994. You'd think it was 094 for the social development that is expressed by some of our neighbors. Police raided an alleged dogfighting ring behind a North Amityville delicatessen Sunday night, seizing 20 pit bulls and 8 guns and arresting the deli owner. How'd you like to have this guy making your ham and cheese? Fawad S. Hana, 40, was arraigned yesterday in 1st District Court in Central Islip on a felony charge of animal fighting and 2 misdemeanor charges. In my country, we always kill the dogs and starve them to fight for our pleasure. It's fun to watch dogs kill each other, bite off neck and ear, to make big hole in dog's stomach. He was charged with cruelty to animals and possession of an illegal handgun. Hannah, who was released on $5,000 bail, acknowledged not having a license for his pistol, but denied the other charges. How could I, a half-blind man, feed and fight dogs, he asked, saying that he lost the sight in his left eye 2 years ago. The goal is to blow up the World Trade Center. If I can't see, how could I do it? On the guns, he said. Where I live, everybody has guns. The pistol never left the house. Why a businessman can't protect himself and the drug dealers can? Hannah ran the ring in a large shed behind his delicatessen and home at 679 and 681 Broadway, respectively, said Sergeant James Burke of the Suffolk Police 1st Precinct Crime Section. Many of the dogs were undernourished and exposed to the elements in makeshift wooden cages, said Gary Rogers, a detective with the Suffolk County Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Hannah maintained that the dogs were properly fed. Now, I want to tell you, there is an inclination on the part of a lot of people to abuse animals. But I've never seen that happen. I've never read reports of that happening in England. I've never seen beautiful little old ladies from England raising pit bulls. And some cultures value animals. And then again, because this is a multicultural show, I find it's incumbent upon me to point this out. And some cultures are sweet to animals. They nurture them. They nurse them. If they find a broken sparrow, they take it home and cultivate it. They take care of it, attend to its needs. And then yet there are other cultures, no doubt far more advanced. And those cultures burn goats and disembowel chickens in a paean of praise to their god, or starve pit bulls and then send them out into a pit to gouge and to eviscerate each other. It's amazing. That's what I love about the multicultural world. We found one pit bull that was severely bitten and ripped apart, and it was in what I consider a dogfighting pit, Rogers said. The dog was in there cowering in the corner, and there was fresh blood on the carpet that they fought on. A waist-high wall for spectators to stand behind was at one end of the pit, which was about 10 feet by 10 feet, Rogers said. I just imagine who was there. It must have been Averill Harriman,
Warren Christopher, Elliot Richardson. I picture Elliot Richardson there cheering on the pit bulls. Who else? Who else would have been there? Maybe, I'm trying to think of somebody. Warren Christopher, Abe Harriman. How about former Secretary of State Rogers? William Rogers, he would have, I'm sure he was there with Abe Harriman. It was a multi-party as well as multicultural. Maybe Gene Kirkpatrick, I'm sure, was there cheering on the pit bulls. Trying to think of who. Oh, yeah, General Haig. General Haig, I'm certain, was there. Edwin Meese must have been there attending the pit bull fight. Let's see. How about the Whitneys? A lot of horse people were there since they, the sports people. So I'm sure that the Whitneys were well represented. How about Mrs. Payson? I'm sure the late Joan Payson was there watching the pit bulls. Trying to think of who else might have been there. Alan Dulles, Mrs. Gloria V.W. Pinckney III, she was there. And C.V. Guest, Cornelia Guest and Mother were there at the pit bull fight. Yeah, that's the crowd. 11 of the 20 dogs were puppies from 14 weeks to 5 months old, said Dennis Matson, 14 weeks to 5 months old, supervisor of the Babylon Town Animal Shelter, which was taking care of the dogs yesterday. Some of the adult dogs had scars, he said. The injured dog, a female between 18 months and 2 years old, was treated for bite wounds all over its body, said Dr. Frank Liguri, a veterinarian. She's afraid of other dogs right now, no question about that, he said. Police seized an illegal 9mm handgun, 7 rifles and shotgun. Let me read that again. Police seized an illegal 9mm handgun, 7 rifles and shotguns, a crossbow, and more than 100 hypodermic needles. Hannah also will be charged with possession of hypodermic needles without a state health department permit, Rogers said. Rogers had been investigating the case for 2 years. He would not reveal how he broke the case. Rogers obtained the warrant at 9:10 p.m., and the raid was carried out shortly before 11 p.m. An employee at a strip mall next to Hannah's property said he had heard rumors of dogfighting. It's quieter than it used to be, said the man who asked to remain anonymous. Every time you go outside, something would set them off, and there would be a chorus of dogs barking. Just another little multicultural tidbit there on the Jay Diamond Show.
One patriotic American to another great American, Jay. Yeah, maybe Tupac didn't like the fact that he in all likelihood had a skunk for a doctor in Bellevue. Only people who hate America and the police could buy that trash. You know, Jay, one of the new reasons that these America-hating hypocrites are risking their lousy necks to get to this oppressive country is because they know there's an army of anti-American liberal lefties and Marxist lefty lawyers ready to go to bat for them, even to the detriment of their own country, to enable them to stay in this country legally or illegally and get everything they demand. And if they don't get what they want, they repeat the cry that's worked very well for domestic enemies of this country. They've learned their lessons very well through worldwide news reports and other media, and just declare that we're racist. The Mexican enemy invaders are the best example of this. And Jay, I'm tired of sore-losing liberals using the, quote, poor people they say they care about as a wedge, a tool, in an attempt to make conservatives and Republicans appear to be uncaring, heartless, and, cutting down on waste or eliminating it altogether is now called mean-spirited. Liberals and the left want people to do...
Hey, you know what's mean-spirited? A guy comes up, chases you down a side street, puts a gun in your ribs and says, "Give me money." And you say, "No,
give me my money."
You say, "No, I'd rather not." And he says, "You're mean-spirited."
That's right.
When he shoots you, though, he's not mean-spirited. He's merely responding to a predatory society.
Yeah, that's it.
He's striking a blow against fashion. Right. Anyway, John... Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you... All right, well, I'll hold you over. Okay. We'll hold you over.
Thank you.
What a way to start the next hour. John from Staten Island. Did you hear Frank call Curtis today?
He bombed his Air Force on the ground.
Stay where you are on WABC. We go back to John from Staten Island. Hello, John.
Hey, here I am. That was good, Jay.
You like that?
Sounds kind of natural to me.
Maybe.
I think you're talking too much to Hilly. Or life.
I don't know what you mean, John.
I'll give you some time to figure it out. It's been a rough week. But, you know, Jay, to get back to what I was saying about the lying liberals, the liberals and the left want people to depend on those who always speak of giving the store away and punishing rich people. That's how liberals get their power, by exploiting people's fears and jealousy. Why should they be worried that Republicans are elected? They should be elated. According to the 1990 census, in the 1980s, the median income for black families grew 34% in New York, 8% nationwide. The median income for Hispanic families grew 22% in New York, 7% nationwide. Overall family income grew 22% for minorities. So all of this fear about the Republicans and how poor people are going to suffer under them. And, you know, the cry of the Democrats in the last election, Jay, the presidential election, was everything that's up should be down, and everything that's down should be up. Well, according to a McKinsey report lately, the United States is still first in almost every major area of a human endeavor since 1960. Our manufacturing has not gone down, it's gone up. Our technological and agricultural advancement is still the best in the world. We're more productive than any people on the earth. We have the best workers and minds in the world. Everything that was up was supposed to be up, and everything that was down was supposed to be down. It was just the opposite of what the lying liberals told us. And Jay, contrary to public belief, there are not a lot of rich people in America. 90% of Americans, according to the 1990 census, make less than $40,000 a year.
And you won't find them going to the Renaissance weekend, by the way.
That's right.
They're not for, that's not for 40,000 and up people, 40,000 and down people. The Renaissance is for the millionaires like Clinton and his pals.
Right. I wonder when those 23 out of 28 senator millionaires who happen to be Democrats are going to give half of their salary to the, quote, poor. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right. Hillary Clinton has put out the call for a left-wing antidote to Rush Limbaugh. This is very peculiar because if you remember, right at the outset of the Clinton administration, they loved talk show hosts. Do you remember when Lisa Sliwa went down to Washington? They invited all these talk show hosts to the White House lawn. People have forgotten that. In those days, they loved talk show hosts because a lot of these hosts were giving them positive play. But then something happened, as the novel by Joseph Heller went. Something happened and the worm turned, and now Hillary is claiming that the only reason they lost the election wasn't the philosophy, it had nothing to do with Janet Reno, Joycelyn Elders, Devil Patrick, Lanny Guinier, Webster Hubble, and Heyman over at Justice, had nothing to do with Joshua Steiner, had nothing to do with Jim McDougal, had nothing to do with Susan McDougal, nothing to do with Judge Hale, nothing to do with Stephanopoulos trying to con Roger Altman, nothing with Stephanopoulos muscling the Justice Department out of into firing Jay Stevens. Nothing. All of this had nothing to do with it. Nothing. That was irrelevant. But she doesn't like the idea that people are onto them now, and so she thinks she's blaming it all on Rush Limbaugh. Much easier to pin it all on Rush Limbaugh than to blame herself and to admit to herself that a lifetime of personal propaganda, and I might add a lifetime of propaganda steeped in what Newt Gingrich correctly analyzes as the McGovernick counterculture mindset, headset, attitude, is what brought about her political destruction and the destruction of her husband's presidency, something they had aspired to all their lives. And look what's happened to them. And can you really fail to wonder how stupid these people can be with their elitist educations behind them? Can you really fail to recognize how dumb and self-centered and unconscious and unaware and insensate Hillary Clinton and her husband are? 43% of the vote, they win, and they thought they got the Roosevelt landslide of 1936. I am not a professional politician, but if I woke up and found myself president on January 20, 1993, and I wanted to promulgate a health care plan for the indigent in this country, do you think with my 43% mandate, I would hire Ira Magaziner and meet in secret with 500 people with an interest in health care behind closed doors? no media access, and come up with a plan and then dictate to the Republicans what we're going to do? She couldn't even hold her own party together. It was a disgrace, a fiasco, and it revealed for the nation and the world the amateurish nature of the Clinton presidency. Children, little children. Well, if it had been me, I would have met the next day, January 21st, with Bob Dole. I would have gotten together with the leadership in the House, the Republican leadership. The Republican and Democrat leadership. I would have met with Bob Dole. I would have met with Bob Michael. I would have called Gingrich in there, and I would have said, what do you think we could do in the interests of the whole nation without disorienting our socioeconomic system, without causing a cultural and economic cataclysm, without impinging on the rights of our fellow citizens to go to the doctor and get the health care they deem necessary? What can we do to help people who are indigent get health care? I would have gone it, but they didn't do that. They tried to ram it through with a mandate, in quotes mandate, because of course it was no mandate, comprised by 43% of the people. You know the only word to characterize this man and his wife? Stupid, blind, ignorant, unfeeling, unaware, but basically dumb. All right, here, I haven't given the fact, but it might sound like if former Governor Cuomo, who is the most cited antidote to Rush, gets a national radio show and decides to become the lefty Rush Limbaugh. I wonder how it would sound.
Greetings across the formerly looted and taxed, sight-soaked plains of my friends, and search no further, Steven Spielberg. It is I, your host, the cure for congressional conservative congestion, a 10-quart multicultural colonic, otherwise known as the Dose. And I'm standing right behind you. America, the way things ought not to be. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me, Mr. Former Mayor. Standing precariously on the ledge of societal evolution, my friends, with half my brain and talent on loan from a secular, omnipotent, asexual deity, coming to you live via taxpayer-subsidized splendor, my friends, high atop the studios of National Public Radio, the flagship station of excellence in liberalism. And you thought it was an oxymoron. Well, the deed is done. The people have spoken. They listened very carefully, weighed all the issues, took a long, hard look at the results of my 12 illustrious years as their chief executive officer, discussed events and circumstances of the day amongst themselves, thought things through, and came to their decision. And on November 8, 1994, they went to the polls and answered my request for re-election with a resounding, up yours. But I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter, my friends. Quite the contrary. I find enormous pleasure in the knowledge that my esteemed political career draws to a close with a great dissimilarity to those who lost before me, like Ed Koch, Bobby Abrams, or Elliot Spitzer. Bloodied, my friends, but not bald. And to those of you laboring under the false assumption that you won't have me to kick around anymore, I can only say that you are sadly mistaken. Do we have the music? We do? Okay, play the Mario update theme. My friends, I am holding before me in my formerly red ink-stained fingers from numerous deficits several newspaper editorials which claim, my friends, that one contributing factor to my humiliating defeat at the polls a few weeks ago was due to my handling of the Thomas Grasso case. Well, my friends, I think it's high time we clear the air on the Thomas Grasso situation once and for all, okay? Now, as you all know, and as far back as I can remember, my views on capital punishment have never varied, never wavered. I've always believed that the death penalty was best reserved for only the most deserving cases, such as tourists, unborn babies,
even newborn babies. Hey, I'm pro-choice. And least of all, let's not forget the occasional bodega owner. Now I ask you, does Thomas Grasso fall into any of the aforementioned categories? My friends, of course not. Number one, Thomas Grasso was convicted of the brutal, cold-blooded, grisly, unprovoked murder of two innocent, harmless, decent, peace-loving, elderly women. You follow? Number two, Mr. Grasso, upon his conviction, was sentenced to pay the maximum price, that being the forfeiture of his own life. So here's Thomas Grasso, friends, sitting on Oklahoma death row. Having exhausted all appeals and having made peace with his divine providence, Thomas Grasso took what little control he had over his miserable little existence by admitting his guilt and expressing a desire to accept his fate, take his punishment, and go on to meet his maker. That's where I come in. Friends, now, when I sued the state of Oklahoma over Grasso's custody, it was solely for the purpose of making a point. Do you know that to this day, Thomas Grasso still maintains his guilt? Do you know that Mr. Grasso's eagerness to return to Oklahoma's death row for completion of sentence remains undiminished? And that's my whole point. You see, friends, I believe that Grasso gesticulates the heartfelt emotions of most of us in the United States. And that is, during my tenure as chief executive officer of this great state, most Americans, if given a choice, would rather be executed in Oklahoma than live in New York. And so, my friends, I ask you, could you blame them?
Well,
we're out of time, my friends. We'll see you tomorrow.
New York State, but all the streets are full of hate.
I hope you like the new bumper music.
Here is what we say.
Matilda picked it out. I hope she finds us a new place to live soon. Before the riots start. Friends, stay tuned. Jay Diamond is next.
Academy. Okay, let's see. Architect? No. Appliance technician? No. Account representative? No. Systems manager? No. Information systems analyst? No. Management consultant? No. Aha! President. Oh, must be experienced. Rocket scientist? No. Damn! Just ain't no jobs. How am I going to collect unemployment if I can't get a job?
Have you ever thought about a career in community activism?
Who are you?
This is Al Schaffman for the Al Schaffman School of the Protest Arts and Theological Seminary. You see, Khalid, in trying to address the needs of the community, the Clinton crime bill will allow for the creation of dozens of new and exciting programs like empowerment zones and midnight basketball.
So?
Hey, Khalid, how come you sound like that? There's something wrong with the way you speak.
Yeah, but Jay's doing the skit, and I don't want to make it complicated for him, so I'm speaking this way tonight.
Well, go ahead and do what you want, stupid. But that means money, moolah. That means the gravy train is pulling out and the time is ripe for enlightened community leadership and inspired underachievers. The Al Schaffman School of the Protest Arts will teach you how to spot prejudice where none exists, revise history to suit your needs, and interpret new and innovative forms of root cause behavior. And at our extension campus at the Whitney Museum, you'll learn the subtle art of grabbing up those National Endowment Art dollars. Think of it, $25,000 for a police uniform full of bullet holes, and your picture in the New York Times Sunday paper. But enough from me. Let's hear some unsolicited testimony from one of our recent graduates.
I used to be all alone. Damn it, that's right. I had no friends, no money, and no future, you damn fool. And then I graduated from the Al Schaffman School of the Protest Arts. Yeah, that's right. I got a BS in teledialogue. Now, I still don't have any friends, but I am a successful, semi-self-sufficient restaurateur. Excuse me. There's my phone now. Hello, Domino's. What do you mean your order is wrong? Did you ever stop to think that maybe you ordered it wrong, you damn fool? Did I write it down? I have you know, Mrs. Leibowitz, that I hail from a culture steeped in a rich tradition of oral history. I don't need no writing. If you eat only kosher, then why did you order a sausage and cheese pizza? Look, what does it say on the damn menu? I said,
I said, what does it say on the damn menu? Oh, I see. You don't have a menu. In other words, you don't have your facts straight. Damn Jews. So come on down to the Slave Theater and sign up today. While you're there, say hello to Dr. McIntosh and Betty Dobson. The first 100 students will be given their own complimentary Sacred Covenant code decoder ring to assist you in your studies. And don't delay. That gravy train won't wait long. All aboard!
And that is in honor of Betty Dobson and Dr. McIntosh and all my friends at Simotac. David, this is Jay Diamond. Out of my profound respect for these people and their fight for truth. Ladies and gentlemen, Al Sharpton for Al Sharpton's March and Ride.
You know, being an activist as social conscience of the community can be a lot of hard work. The phone rings constantly, and your time is never your own. Oh, Al, Tawana called. She needs a credit reference. Are you free for lunch or this? Al, Ralph Nimitz took another shortcut through Crown Heights last night. Are you busy today? You see what I mean? I never have any peace. That's why I use Al Sharpton's March and Ride. If you're a professional protester or just starting out, if your group or civic organization has a gripe or grievance, or you just a freelance troublemaker in search of an identity, just bring it all down to Al Sharpton's March and Ride right here at the Slave Master Theater. You know, mass transit doesn't make stops on the Brooklyn Bridge, and you can't pay a cab driver with food stamps. At Al Sharpton's March and Ride, we do things different. In fact, we might even pay you. At Al Sharpton's March and Ride, we'll drive you to it. That's Al Sharpton's March and Ride, right here at the Slave Master Theater. And while you're there, don't forget to visit the Slave Master Theater gift shop, sponsored by the Nation of Islam Ladies Auxiliary of Sodality. They stock hundreds of items to suit all your protest needs, like bullhorns, alphabet caps, and placards. The Key to Islam Learning Center, featuring Hooked on Prophets, Prophets. The Way Things Ought Not to Be by David Dinkins, and my own personal autobiography, Fat Like Me. For those on government assistance, we have Congressman Rangel's Stigma Remover. In our Health and Beauty Aids Department, we have Professor Jeffrey's Snake Oil and Hazel Duke's Ugly Magic Scowling Cream. That sets the scowl on your face for 3 whole weeks without ever taking it off. Good for looking at the police. This week's special, Minister Farrakhan's Paint by Numbers set with the extra can of black. Be among the first 100 shoppers and you'll receive your very own Sacred Covenant decoder ring absolutely free. The Slave Master Theater is proud to announce its recent selection to the Tribe of Shabazz Sensitive Locations National Registry. Remember, when the going gets tough, blame the Jews. Peace.
All right, on WABC.
Let's not believe for 1 second that David Dinkins was telling the truth when he couldn't get a cab, or supposedly he was passed up by a white cab driver.
Yeah.
First of all, Jay...
I intended to bring up that imbecile later, and I'm glad you reminded me. I'll be speaking of that jerk before the night is out. Oh, hold on a minute, John. Oh, taxi. Taxi. Hey, you son of... Hey, you... Oh, okay, John.
What David Dinkins won't tell you is that half of the cab drivers who won't pick up other blacks are blacks themselves. But this was David Dinkins' use of race to gain sympathy once again. He's been famous for it after he took that beating by his own students in his so-called class that he teaches.
That's what he's worrying about this weekend, that he didn't get a taxi. Raymond Cannon wishes he had that problem, and so does Raymond Cannon's family. How come Dinkins didn't unburden himself with respect to the murder by those 3 goons, those 3 feral beasts of Raymond Cannon? How come he had nothing to say about that? What was on his mind is a cabbie didn't stop for him. Hey, John, let me tell you something. I don't believe... I'm going to tell you something else. That's a product of his own paranoia. I have been passed over by taxis numerous times. I, Jay Diamond, this is not a lie. No baloney. I have... No baloney, John. You know, Arnie. Anyway, I have stood on the street, John, night after night after night, and watched cabs with the light on whiz by me. And I have scratched my head saying, wait a minute, do I look like a tough guy? I don't think I look intimidating, but I swear to you, cabs have run right by me and picked up other people. Sometimes they just drive by me without stopping. Maybe I'm the invisible man.
Yeah, well, it's happened to me also, but, you know, David, it didn't even happen to Dinkins. He's lying. Look, he's always used race to gain sympathy. When David Dinkins was criticized in the press in the first 6 months of his administration, he said, quote, "Some people just want to see us in overalls and on the plantation." When the crowd booed Dinkins for marching with the gays in the St. Patrick's Day parade, remember he said he was booed because he was black. After 1 year in office, a poll showed that Dinkins' popularity was dropping. When he was asked about it, David Dinkins replied, quote, "It hasn't fallen among blacks," implying, of course, that since his popularity had fallen only among groups other than blacks, all those other groups were just prejudice. And when Ed Koch endorsed Rudy Giuliani for mayor, David Dinkins said, quote, "It's understandable. He was a 3-term mayor who was defeated by this upstart from Harlem." Now, of course, he couldn't just say this upstart. He had to mention that he was from Harlem, suggesting again that his opponent was just against him because he was black. And you may recall in the early part of his administration, Jay, Dinkins tried to pressure the state into giving him whatever he wanted by telling Mario Cuomo, quote, "The whole country is watching to see how you treat the first black mayor of New York." Another classic example of the nice man, David Dinkins, using race to get what he wanted. And by the way, I saw two beautiful examples of the black African tradition of collective cooperation. Kwanzaa. You know, when 3 of them got together to murder that poor police officer and another 6 got together to beat the hell out of an Asian police officer in the village because that officer had the nerve to ask them to get off his car, and one of them said, "You're Chinese, aren't you?" and then proceeded to beat him up. Where's Mario Cuomo's anti-bias bill, Jay? And where's the Asian community who seem to be mobilized very fast when a white European plays the part of an Asian in Miss Saigon, or when Kaidi Chung or somebody contract isn't renewed to do the news on TV? Then they can unite to protest. But they never seem to protest blacks. Are they running scared also? And those black Nazis who wanted to and hoped to see the New York Post would go out of business because they can't stand any publication that really tells the truth, they may be seeing their beloved communist NAACP fold soon. They're in big financial trouble. So when it does fold, we can finally sing, "We have overcome."
Thank you, John.
Thanks, Jay.
On the couch with David N. for no fair, Dinkins.
Doctor, you've got to help me. I think I'm losing my mind.
How can you lose what you never had?
Now, wait a minute now, Doctor. I'm not paying these rates, so you could insult me now.
Okay. What seems to be the problem?
Why, I fell asleep last night and I dreamed I was driving a cab.
Why don't you tell me all about it?
I dreamed I was the only African-American cab driver in the entire city. So I thought to myself, here's a chance to prove a theory of mine. The interpersonal dynamic between cab driver and passengers of European descent. And I spent the rest of the evening driving around the whitest neighborhoods I could find.
And what were the results of your findings?
Inconclusive.
No one would answer your survey questions?
No one would flag me down. Nobody would get me in my cab.
I see. You mean you spent the entire evening behind the wheel of their cab and no one would even hail you down?
That's right. Well, I was waved at by David Patterson, I think.
You don't know for sure?
Well, it's hard to tell with David, Doctor. I wasn't sure if he was waving at me or the guy 3 cars back, so I kept going.
Okay, back on WABC, this is Jay Diamond. This is a great man. You can tell his greatness because it's in inverse proportion to the extent that he is vilified as a demon. The reason he is vilified by the people who exhibit hippie values, those people who are now in control temporarily of the White House, is because the hippies have always hated traditional Americans. And this man preaches a gospel of a return to traditional America. He doesn't mock it. He doesn't scorn it. He doesn't deride it. He doesn't ridicule it. He exults in being a regular, normal American.
something that's like so out of fashion. I mean, I'm going down to CBGB to be branded tomorrow on my rear end and my left testicle. Oh, like, I mean, I'm branding myself with like my boyfriend's brand. You know, it says like Tiger. Yeah, oh, like my boyfriend and I are going down to CBGB's to be branded on our buttocks.
That's what repulses Newt Gingrich. That's what repulses most Americans. And that is decidedly out of fashion. For those of you who are slaves to fashion, take notice. But Newt Gingrich, it's interesting. The left, ladies and gentlemen, the left has always prided itself on being the brain trust. Oh, we're the intellectuals, you know, like those right-wing Archie Bunkers. They always conveniently ignored all the brilliant people writing on the right. William F. Buckley, they ignored him. George Will, they ignored him. John Leo, they ignored him. Walter Williams, they ignored him. Thomas Sowell, they ignored him. They ignored all the right-of-center commentators, as though they were, all right-wingers were Archie Bunker Philistines. That was the concept. Oh, we're so ethereal, man, and we're so artistic, and like we're so creative. One thing I really admire is like creativity, man. Oh, like, man, I'm really creative. Oh, well, you Republicans, I mean, like in your suits, you're just so uncreative, man. All you do is juggle numbers. Like, we're so creative, like on drug trips, and we're creative sexually. I had sex with my sister, and then I slept with my mother. Hey, that's cool, man. That's a cool song, baby. Yeah, well, that's out of style now. That's why they hate Gingrich, because he loathes hippies the way I do. Realizes how destructive the counterculture was to this country, notwithstanding Alan Watts and the protestations of Theodore Roszak, who wrote The Making of a Counterculture, the most destructive cultural social force ever to poison the world, the hippie counterculture of the late 1960s. Even though I thought the Vietnam War was idiotic, I hated the hippie protesters of that war. Anyway, they try to ridicule Gingrich as an Archie Bunker. But hey, guess what? It can't be done, because Newt Gingrich is a genuine thinker, an intellectual, an academic. He is an academic. So he has more brains than the leftist hacks who revile him, who loathe him. Let me read you some excerpts from his comments, Newt Gingrich's comments yesterday, after having been nominated for the speakership of the United States House of Representatives. Some of the things he said, just some excerpts. And I know it's hard to believe. He did this after recommending a reading list. His list of required readings for his fellow members of Congress: Declaration of Independence, Federalist Papers, Democracy in America by Alexis Tocqueville, Washington, The Indispensable Man, Creating a New Civilization, The Politics of the Third Wave by Alvin and Heidi Toffler. Did I hear Alvin and Heidi Toffler? Did I hear...